We spoke with sports columnist Jonathan Wilson, the author of The Power and the Glory, A New History of the World Cup, about Gianni Infantino's legacy and his impact on FIFA.
February 2016, he takes over and he says, right, we're going to clean everything up. He ostentatiously flies on a budget carrier to his first FIFA Congress. You'll have noted that's changed to the private jet.
Yeah, that didn't last long, but...
And he said, look, we've got far too many committees. We need to clear these out. It's massively inefficient. Then in 2024, a vote was taken to increase the number of standing committees at FIFA from 7 to 35. Now, the reason this is significant is that if you're a delegate representing one of the 211 FIFA members, you will be appointed to various committees. Each committee brings with it a stipend and very generous expenses.
That's where that money goes.
And that's where the money goes. And of course, if you're the delegate from country X, it doesn't matter if people in country X think, oh, yeah, FIFA's a disgrace, Infantino's an idiot, oh, we've got to get rid of him, the ticket prices are too high. He just thinks, I'm getting this lovely bunch of money, and why am I going to vote against a president who brings that to me?
So this is very strategic, expanding these committees.
It's basic clientelism. The other thing that the money does, and this is slightly more complex, there are two schemes: the Goal Project, which was introduced by Sepp Blatter in 1998, and the Forward Project, which is Infantino's great plan. And this redistributes money from FIFA to federations. So, for instance, say you're, I don't know, the FA of Gabon. Okay. And you say, look, we need a new national stadium. A national stadium's falling down. Actually, Gabonese national stadium's quite nice, but just for sake of argument, Gabon. And if people go, yeah, okay, we get you can't afford that, but it'd be useful if you had a nice new stadium. You can generate revenue through that, and so we'll give some of these great profits from the World Cup. And the World Cup is by far the biggest.
Level the playing field, kind of literally some places, but that seems like a nice mission.
But of course, none of these are properly audited. So there hasn't been a review since 2016, which is probably itself significant. But the review in 2016 said 81% of those 211 member nations are not properly audited. So
that money is going.
Well, who knows? But I think we can guess.
On that note, there's also Infantino's been catching a lot of flack for this thing that happened with the U.S. player revoking the red card after. Well,
technically, he didn't revoke the red card. He suspended the suspension. So the suspension was suspended for a year, exactly the same as he'd done with Cristiano Ronaldo, who was sent off in the penultimate qualifier. So he was given a 3-game ban for that. He served 1 game, and the final 2 games were suspended. Also, 3 other players, basically to make it obvious, or to make it less obvious that Ronaldo was getting dispensation because they want Ronaldo at the World Cup. And I think you can say this follows from the situation with the Club World Cup last year, where, I don't know if you remember, but essentially 2 Mexican teams who qualified had the same owner. You can't have that. One of them had to step down.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it should have meant the MLS champions got in, but instead it went to Inter Miami because that gets you Messi in because they finished top of the regular season.
There does seem to be a little weighting towards these more popular players.
It's gerrymandering to get the most famous people involved. Yeah. Now, you might say, look, tennis tournaments, golf tournaments do this kind of thing all the time with wildcards. Let's get somebody famous, somebody popular. It drives revenue. Where's the problem? Well, the problem is it's one thing to do it if your tournament has 128 participants.
Right, and there's a slot specifically for those shenanigans.
Yeah, it's quite another when there is a qualification process or if you're overriding a disciplinary process. So with Balogun, the fact that he could play against Belgium, he is the first player since Garincha in 1962 to be sent off at the World Cup and not be suspended for the next game. And the reason that's so damaging, it's not just that it feels unfair, it's that it casts into doubt the integrity of the entire competition. So if you are, for instance, Egypt, who are very unhappy with some of the refereeing against Argentina, and I think you can understand a couple of 50-50 calls, key 50-50 calls went against them. And then I think, well, hang on, is that just because we were a bit unlucky, or is that because there is some directive from on high that Lionel Messi, because he's famous, because he generates revenue, has to be kept in the tournament?
This decision with the red card is quite controversial. You don't think that'll hurt him in the elections, or you think he has enough committees and other friends that he will get to stay?
There's already 200 of the 211 members who've said they'll back him, so it will be by acclamation. So, I think it has damaged him, and I think there's 2 aspects of this World Cup that have damaged him. So firstly, that I think there probably are good delegates who recognise this as a problem of integrity. There may even be quite cynical delegates who think, actually, if the integrity of the competition is undermined, is it going to carry on generating revenues it does is the world.
Right. At some point,
If the world loses faith, then sport doesn't work without faith. The dramatic twists at the end, if you think that might have been scripted, well, then you're watching
You're not going
wrestling
to pay
or
these
drama.
absurd ticket prices
Exactly.
if it's not real.
So
we had that sport here. It's called wrestling.
Yeah.
Totally different audience. Yeah.
So that's one element of it. The other is, I think, to do with Infantino's made this big point of this is the most inclusive World Cup ever, which I'm afraid is clearly nonsense. When even one of his own referees, Omar Artan from Somalia, can't get into the country. Plus, I mean, I think it depends on the individual country, but roughly 80% of applications by fans and journalists from Africa to come to the tournament were turned down by the US and by Canada. That is by definition not inclusive. And given Infantino likes to portray himself as this champion of the global south, that is a position that's much harder to maintain. So I don't think it's going to have an immediate impact, but it has slightly weakened him. What it might mean is if you were planning to change FIFA's constitution to allow him to stand again in 2027, maybe he'll be a little more reluctant to do that.